What's up, guys? It's V Renee. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. You saw the title of this video. You know what we're gonna be talking about today. I did recently do an updated all-time favorite books ever video. I'll link that in the description or the cards or something. And some of those books are also on this list because if I read them in 2019 and they were my favorite of all time, they're probably also some of my favorites of the year. And just as a heads up, this is gonna be an unscripted kind of summary slash my thoughts on all these different books. I'm not gonna use the scripts that I used when I talked about some of these in my all-time favorites. I'm not even gonna look at that. I'm just gonna talk about how I feel about them, talk about kind of what they're about. So this might be a little rambly, sorry. Number 5 is The Bells by Danielle Clayton. I talked about this book a little bit in some of my honorable mentions in my all-time favorite books. This is a high fantasy tale following Camellia. She is a belle, which in this world is sort of like a creature, like a person with goddess powers to make the people of Orleans, of the world, beautiful. They are sallow-skinned, straw-haired, red-eyed, freaky creatures, and the goddess of beauty created the bells who grow out of the ground like flowers to make them beautiful. And it follows her graduating from her where she grew up with all her little flower sisters to being in the court and helping the people and finding out the corruption behind the bells, what's really going on in the royal family, being manipulated by this princess, and all this crazy stuff happens. It's just such a rich, vivid world. I usually don't like high fantasy stuff, but this world is so rich and interesting, and the political intrigue and it was just a really beautiful story. There's a lot of twists. There's a lot of deceit and people who make bad decisions for good reasons. And so you're really torn between you suck, I hate you, and but I understand that you did what you had to do to survive. There's a lot of representation, and it's not done in a shoehorny, look how diverse we are. I have a gay handmaid, and oh, over here the queen is gay, and oh, look, I'm black. That's cool. It's just done in a really authentic way of yes, everybody, beauty is everything. Beauty is every different kind of person you can be. This book was just really cool, and I really liked it. Number 4 on the list of the top 5 books I read this year is Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. I had never read this book before. I got it on audiobook. I did one of those things I tend to do is where I don't have anything to read. I'll go on my library's audiobook available now audiobooks, and I'll just type in Stephen King. And Dolores Claiborne came up, and I was okay, I never seen the movie, never read it. I was okay, I'll read it. And it's so good. It's so good. It's not his typical, well, maybe it is his typical style. I tend to read his more horror driven stuff, but he does a psychological thriller really well, which isn't something I've really dove into in terms of his writing. The book's about a woman named Dolores Claiborne. It's framed in sort of this scenario in which she's being questioned by police, and the whole book is basically her telling them this story. And so there's little inputs now and then of her answering, talking to them specifically while she's recounting this story. And the story is about how basically everyone in town knows she killed her husband, and now the woman she takes care of has also died, and now they're questioning her because they're well, we know you killed your husband back in the day. You probably killed this lady too, because she left her big ass inheritance money. Her whole estate is left to you. And she just tells this whole story of her life and why she did the things that she did. And I had a really close connection to this book because Dolores reminds me of my Nana. I texted her as soon as I started listening to it. I was have you read, because she loves Stephen King as well. I was have you read Dolores Claiborne? She's is that about that woman who kills her husband? I was yeah, not that my Nana killed her husband. I'm not implicating her. She never killed anybody, I don't think. But just her personality really reminds me of her. It was just a really good, well put together story. I really loved Dolores as a character. I really rooted for her, even though she did some fucked up shit. I was yeah, girl. Again, I love those stories where it's you did some messed up stuff, but I totally get why you did what you did. Number 3 of my top 5 favorite books I read in 2019 is Grady Hendricks' My Best Friend's Exorcism. This is another one that I read via audiobook. Dolores Claiborne was one that I read via audiobook, and this one. So My Best Friend's Exorcism follows this girl named Abby, who is best friends with this other girl named Gretchen. All throughout childhood kind of tells the story of how they met and everything, and then how they've gotten to be like friends with these other two girls. They all are like hanging out at the lake during summer break. They drop acid, and then Gretchen like freaks out, and everybody's like, oh, okay, she just had a bad trip, whatever. But then she starts to act funny, and all this kind of takes place in the 80s, so there's a lot of like nostalgia to it. Like if you like Stranger Things but you're like a little too old to like relate, I don't know, they're older than the Stranger Things kids is what I mean, but the same kind of like 80s vibe and everything. Basically you find out Gretchen has been possessed, and she kind of is like the demon inside her uses the influence to like affect everybody around her. Only Abby kind of sees what's really going on. She starts to get blamed for Gretchen's behavior when she admits that they took drugs. They kind of see her as like this bad influence, and you get so invested because it kind of cuts back and forth between like when they were in, I don't know, second grade or something and they became friends, to now, to like, oh, when I was 11, this happened. Oh, these are the problems that Gretchen's had with her family and I've been there. These are the problems that my family has and she's been there. Like how they know each other so well, so inside and out. And when I say this one and the one after this, like number 3 and number 2, this one and then the one that's number 2, when I say some of the most gruesome horror that I have ever read / heard in my life, I am not kidding. Gross, 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 gross. There are so many parts where I literally was gagging, like I can't even explain. I was like crying at some certain points, just like the feeling of like, we all had that friend. Maybe we don't have them anymore. Maybe we haven't had them yet, but we all have that one friend in our lives. It's like, I would kill for you. I would die for you. Like you are my everything. And that's definitely Gretchen and Abby. And you just feel it. You feel like the pain that Abby's going through. It's a really good allegory for like depression. Like when your friend is like developing depression, like that often happens when you're a teenager. Really sympathize with Abby because like Gretchen does some fucked up shit to her, and you're like, God, Gretchen is such an asshole. But then you're like, it's not her fault. And so it's a great metaphor for like mental illness and like things that go on in people's families that turn them into assholes. And like when you're a teenager, you don't understand empathy, and you're just starting to understand empathy, and you can see Abby's journey of like understanding and empathizing and realizing like that she's the only one that can help her, and like it was just really powerful. I really highly recommend that book. It was very emotional and scary and beautiful. The next one, number 2 on the list of my favorite books of 2019, is actually a tie, and if you saw my all-time favorite video, you're gonna know that this is gonna be on there, and it's gonna be a tie because it is The Merciless and The Merciless 2 by Danielle, Vega, Rollins. And this story, I said this before, I stand by it. It is as if Mean Girls and The Exorcist had a baby and it was raised by Stephen King. Like, it is like exactly that. That is exactly what it is. It follows, I want to say her name is Sophia. Follows this girl who's new in town. Her mother is a member of the armed forces, so they move around a lot. She comes to school, these like popular girls befriend her, and they're very religious, and so she starts to kind of like fake religious a little bit to like make friends. We've all been there. If you grew up in the South, you sure did that, because the only thing we could do as children was go to youth group, and so if you were not religious, you didn't have any friends. So, been there. And they kind of like acquire this target of like this weird girl named Brooklyn, and they're like, okay, well, Brooklyn is awful and evil, and we want to like help her. And she's like, nah, like I'm just like cool, I hang out with like tattoo artists, like I don't care about you, like whatever. So basically, I guess Brooklyn talks to the boyfriend of one of these girls, and that girl freaks out. They all go out to an abandoned house together, and when Sophia shows up, they have kidnapped Brooklyn, and they're going to perform an exorcism on her. And what devolves in this first book is just like the unraveling of mental wellness of 4 teenage girls. It is very brutal. It is very scary. And it's just awesome. It's just really, really good. Like you think it's over. It's never over when you think it's over. You feel like it lasts forever, even though the book is super short. And then you go into The Merciless 2, where, not to spoil The Merciless 1, Sophia gets sent to boarding school, basically, like a Catholic school. And there's a boys' school and a girls' school, and they have like a courtyard in the middle of them, high blood from a stone. And she meets this guy, and he's like really like religious, and he's like really serious about being religious and blah, blah, blah. And then he decides that she needs an exorcism because she's not like as religious as him. And so then you go like all over again, except now it's like at a remote boarding school in the middle of like Christmas break with no one else there. The ending is like, I was ripping my hair out. I was like, that's the first time in a long ass time I have wanted to throw a book across the room, was the end of The Merciless 2. I like was so close to just like chucking it across the room. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I could not believe it. I'm about to go check those out of the library again. The number one book that I read this year, you should know what it is because it's also my new favorite book of all time. And it is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. If you're new here, I am Shirley Jackson trash. I am Haunting of Hill House trash. I am obsessed with Shirley Jackson. I think she is, Stephen King used to be my all-time fave. They are now dead ass tied, like dead ass. They are absolutely 100% like neck and neck tied. Like there is no like better, or they are the same in my book. I hold the same like respect and love for them. But Shirley did it first. Shirley did it first. Shirley did it best. Shirley did it like when nobody else was doing it. Shirley did it when it wasn't acceptable for a woman to do it. And We Have Always Lived in the Castle is no exception. It follows two sisters, Mary Catherine and Constance Blackwood, and they live in this remote Blackwood Manor on the edge of town, and everybody in town hates them because 6 years prior to the beginning of the book, the rest of their family was murdered by poison, and everyone believes that Constance did it, and she was acquitted, and they just believe that she got away with murder. Dolores Claiborne, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I love people getting away with murder. Okay. And you kind of follow, it's from Mary Catherine's point of view. They call her Mary Cat. So if you hear me say Mary Cat, that's what I'm talking about. Kind of follows her like in her weird like coping mechanisms that she's developed to deal with the hate from the town, as well as like the loss of her family. And how everything like gets totally flipped, turned upside down, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air style, when a cousin comes calling and he's like the rightful heir to the money that her parents left behind and all this stuff. She's got this eccentric uncle who's writing a story about what happened to the family, but he's got like, I guess, dementia. I don't really know what's wrong with him, but he's like a cuckoo bananas nutcase and like doesn't ever know what's actually going on. He just like talks about the case all the time. And basically, I can't give anything away, but nothing is as it seems in this house. The popular opinion, the turn of the tide of the public opinion of this family comes to a head. There is rioting, there is twists and turns upon twists and turns. There are deaths, there are melancholy happy endings. Like it's such a sad ending, but for the characters it's not. Like it's so, that book knocked my fucking socks off. Like I was wearing a bathing suit while I was reading it, but if I had had socks on, they would have been gone. They would have like gone. Like, so yeah guys, that is all I have for you today. That is my top 5 all-time favorite books of 2019. That made no sense. These are my those were my top 5 favorite books that I read in 2019. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know if you liked them as well, or if you thought they were trash and that my opinion is shit. Because like, fine, fair, tell me. That's okay, I guess. Like, I don't know why you would waste your time to tell me that my opinion is shit. Like, you could just unsubscribe. But if you liked any of those books, or you like think that my personality is okay, like, cool, thank you so much. Please subscribe if you haven't already. You can like this video if you want to. You can comment and I'll talk to you because I like talking about books. So let's talk about books. Tell me what your favorite books of this year were. Tell me if I missed any good books that are similar to some of the ones I talked about. You can tell I have a type. I like creepy books, with the exception of The Bells. Wasn't that creepy, but it actually is really, really scary when you think about what it's about. Read it. Tell me if you think The Bells is scary or not. I will see you guys next Wednesday. Goodbye.